In this video, we're going to talk about how to retake your dialogue assessment. So the things we're going to cover in this video in order is first we're going to talk about how to read your score on the rubric at the bottom of your assignment. We're also going to talk about the comments and how to work with them and some tricks and tips on the comments. Then we're going to talk about the steps to retake. And then we're also going to talk about reteaching of dialogue. And I'm going to try to go over some of the things that we talked about in class briefly. So first, let's talk about how to read your score. So if we take a look at my example students here, the first thing you're going to do is if you scroll all the way to the bottom, you'll notice there's a total score. So this is the score that the student earned. And if you take a look at the grading scale, the student earned an F because 9 or below is an F. So if you earned anything below 11 or below, I would strongly recommend that you retake this because it's easy to retake and it does affect your score in English for first quarter because this is a test grade and it's worth 16 points. Next thing I'd like to go over is each category. So you're going to notice that this is broken down by each rule. So if you take a look at this, we have this category fits within the context of the story. So this category means two things. First of all, the dialogue actually does fit like in the story. And secondly, this means that the dialogue actually matches the rule. So like rule 1A, this dialogue is actually a question or an exclamation and it ends in a speaker tag. This part actually covers two things also. Of course, it covers punctuation. So if it has too many punctuation marks, that would mean a 0. If it doesn't have enough punctuation marks, that would mean a 0. Also, this one also covers whether or not capital letters are correctly used. And again, if there's too many, that's a problem. If there's not enough, that's a problem that would result in a 0. So you'll notice each rule has two slots here, one for the first piece of red dialogue, one for the second piece of Rule 1A dialogue. Same way with this one. One for the first category is for the first piece of Rule 1B. Second category is for the second piece of Rule 1B. And you kind of get the idea here. So if you take a look at this person's score, you're going to notice that this person has a piece of dialogue that matches Rule 1A, but there's either a capitalization error or there's a punctuation error. If you take a look at this category, notice this student didn't earn any points at all. That means that they did not have two pieces of Rule 1A dialogue. So that's something they'll have to work on when they retake it. Next thing we're going to talk about is comments. And I use comments a lot. So we do need to talk about how to work with the comments. You'll notice that there are comments along the sides here. The only bad thing about these comments is after there's enough of them, they kind of stack up and they're kind of hard to read. So there's two ways to really focus on what the comment is saying. If you take a look at the letters here, and it might be kind of hard to see on your screen, but you'll notice how this letter right here has kind of a slight highlight. And if you click on that, notice how the comment that pertains to that highlight pops out and the highlight gets darker. So notice this one's saying that for this green sentence, it's only a conversation between one character, and this person has a conversation between two characters. Another way that you can figure out what the comment goes to is if you click on the comment itself. So check your punctuation if I click on that comment. Notice how, first of all, the comment pokes out, and then secondly, how this gets a little bit more highlighted. Okay, so like this one, if I click on this comment, notice how it pertains to this, it pokes out, and then this one gets a little more highlighted. So again, one way to do it is click on the highlight. So notice how this is highlight. If I click on it, let's do this one. If I click on it, notice how it pokes out. Okay, and this highlight gets darker, and this comment pertains to this highlight. Now, when you're making corrections, sometimes your comments will go away if you erase the letters that are highlighted. So for example, if I erase the E and the Y, notice how that's highlighted, that comment's going to go away. So if you accidentally do that and you want to bring that comment back, you can just click redo, and notice how the comment shows back up, and then so does the E and the Y. Another way to get rid of comments is to click resolve, and the comment goes away. If you accidentally do that, if you want to bring the comment back, this time you have to go up here and you click on that, and then you just click reopen, and notice how it's highlighted again, and then it reappears, and then notice how it says it's been reopened. One last thing with comments is you can reply to comments. So if I click on, let's just say I click on this comment, I can say, "What do you mean?" and click reply, and this will go to me. So the student here just sent me a message telling me that they don't really know what I mean when I say check your capitalization. One last thing before we start talking about reteaching is automatically, since I return the assignments to you, you should be able to edit it. But if for some reason that if it says, let's go back to this, if it says view only up top here, and you can't do anything with it, go back to the Google Classroom page and make sure that you click unsubmit. Notice how this one says resubmit. That's because it's already unsubmitted. Okay, next thing we're going to talk about is we're going to do uh, a quick overview of what you need to do to retake. So to retake this, first off, if you make any punctuation additions or modification, in other words, if you add punctuation marks or if you have to take away punctuation marks, you're going to highlight those in pink. Secondly, if you make any capitalization corrections, you're going to highlight that in pink. So either if you lowercase a letter, you're going to highlight the lowercase letter in pink that you've changed, or if you have to capitalize a letter, you're going to highlight that letter that you changed to a capital letter in pink. If you need to add more dialogue, you're going to go through your story and add it, highlight it the color that matches our rule, so it won't be pink because none of the rules are pink, and then you're going to reply to my comment, added dialogue. And then when you're finished, you're going to click turn in. Okay, so let's talk about a real quick reteach for punctuating dialogue. So remember that rule 1A, of course, is red, and 1A is either a question or an exclamation, and it ends with the speaker tag. So we have someone talking, and it ends with the speaker tag. So it's either a question when someone's talking or an exclamation, and it starts with them talking, into the speaker tag. Now, it goes without saying that anytime we have someone talking, we need quotation marks. So anytime you have them saying something, we need quotation marks. So that's all rules. Okay. The thing that makes this rule special is right after they get done speaking, we put a question mark if it's a question, and then we put a period at the end of the speaker tag. Same way the exclamation, right after they're done exclaiming what they're talking, their actual words, we're putting an exclamation mark around what they're actually saying, and then a period at the end. Also, another special feature about this is notice how the speaker tag is lowercase. So even though that looks like it's a brand new sentence, it's not. It's all one piece, and it's just continuing, and it gets lowercased. Now, one trick to this is notice when we're saying what's the time, ask him. Notice how it's actually saying what's the time. That part's actually a question. This ask Kim is not a question, it's a statement. So kind of use that to help you remember. When we talk about rule 1B, that's of course blue. And this is a dialogue that begins with them talking again, just like this one, except this time it's not a question, it's not an exclamation, it's a statement. So again, it goes without saying that we use quotation marks around where they're actually talking. But a couple of special features about this is notice how we have a comma right after what they're saying. Now, what really confuses people and what I've seen a lot when I'm grading is a lot of people get tempted to put a period here because, I mean, going by this you would, but that's not the case. It's a comma. And then the period is still placed at the end of the speaker tag. Notice how this set is lowercase. So the speaker tag's still lowercase. So notice again how we have a comma, not a period, a comma after what they're saying, and then a period at the end. Next rule we're going to talk about is rule 2, and rule 2 begins with the speaker tag. So this time it's just flipped, and we begin with the speaker tag and end with dialogue. And this can be either a question, an exclamation, or a statement. So notice again, here's our speaker tag. I was proud to hear Bob say, and then we have where they actually talk. Okay, a couple things to notice about this. First of all, notice how we have a comma after the speaker tag, and then we also capitalize the first letter of when they say it. Now, this one kind of goes without saying because we always capitalize I, but this is a better example down here. And that throws people off because a lot of people think, well, this is part of the same sentence. So it makes sense that this letter be lowercase, but that's not the case. And then, of course, at the end, we put the punctuation mark that matches what they're saying. So this one, he's exclaiming it. If this was a question, it'd be a question mark at the end. Of course, if it's a period, it'd be a period. Last piece of dialogue we're going to talk about is Rule 3 dialogue, and this one is interrupted dialogue. It's the most complicated. So a couple things about this. First of all, interrupted dialogue is a conversation between one character. So like right here, Sam is the only one talking, and he's getting interrupted. His conversation is getting interrupted by the speaker tag. So Bob, here's our interruption, asks Sam, did you take my pen? Couple special features about this is notice how we, of course, have quotation marks around where uh, they're actually talking. Of course, we never put quotation marks around a speaker tag because they wouldn't actually nobody would actually say the speaker tag if they're talking. Also, notice how we have a comma after the first piece of dialogue, and then we get interrupted, and then we have another comma, and then we have a lowercase letter. And then, of course, we end it with the type of punctuation that matches the dialogue. So here's how I remember this. First of all, notice how there's a natural pause. Bob, comma, asks Sam, comma. Notice how there's a natural pause there. So it just makes sense to put commas around the speaker tag and the first piece of dialogue. Also, notice if we got rid of this, it would just be one big sentence that would make sense. Bob, did you take my pen? So we wouldn't randomly capitalize a letter in the middle of a sentence. So that's why this isn't capitalized. Okay, so that being said, let's go through and see if we can apply our rules to this example and see if we can fix it. And then we're also going to apply the retake steps, that example as well. Now you can approach this however you want. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to go through my comments in order. So I'm going to start with this one. I know this is highlighted, so I'm going to click on it and see what's up with it. And this says, remember, interrupted dialogue is only a conversation between one character. So notice what I have here. Ah, Sally screamed. That was way too close for comfort, stated Mrs. Chipley. So notice how we have a conversation between, we have a conversation with Sally, and then we also have a conversation with Mrs. Chipley. So that can't be it. Also, notice how we have a speaker tag at the end and in the middle, so that's another reason this is incorrect. So we need to fix it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add on to Sally's conversation. So I'm going to say something like, what was that? Now notice my retake rule is I need to highlight what I add in pink. So I'm going to highlight this part. This is the part I added. I'm going to go up, and this is the closest I'm going to get to pink. And I'm not real fussy on this, but just so I know that you added something when I go to grade it. Okay, so now I fixed that. And I can resolve this comment if I want, just to help me keep track. I don't have to. If you want to leave this comment, that's fine too, either way. But this is fixed. The thing is now I have a new set of dialogue, and I really wouldn't have to touch this, but since I'm here, I might as well. But before I do that, let's go through our rules and make sure that it's correct. So first of all, I need a comma after the first speaker or first piece of dialogue, which I have. Okay, then I need a comma after my speaker tag, which I have that there. I need to make sure that my letter is lowercased when it picks back up with my dialogue, which it is. And then I need to make sure that I have an ending mark, which I do. Now, one thing, and I didn't take off points for this, but one thing we do need to work on in formal writing is we should never have all capital letters. So this technically we could fix. Even though it seems like it makes sense, it would just be like that. We shouldn't have the letter over and over and over either. That's just not what we do in formal writing. Okay. Now that I have this, notice how I have another piece of dialogue. I might as well take a look and see if I can change it into something. When I look at it, first of all, I notice how this begins with dialogue. It is a statement. So if I take a look at my rules, I'm looking for something that begins with the actual dialogue and ends with the speaker tag. So notice how that would match rule 1B. So technically, I could change this to 1B. I could highlight this blue. The only problem is if I go through my rules, and this is what you should do each time. So now I have this blue, I'm going to check and make sure it matches each little thing. And first off, I need to make sure that my dialogue has quotation marks, which it does. I also want to make sure that it has a capital letter, which I don't, so I'm going to change that. And then I need to make sure that it has a comma after the piece of dialogue, which it does. And I actually need to make sure that we have a period at the end, which we do. Okay. So I did address this. I might just get rid of this just so I know that I addressed it and I fixed it. Help me keep track. Okay, let's go to this one. I'm going to click on this, pokes out. Looks like I have a punctuation error with this one. So I'm going to take a look at this. It says, would you like some tea? Asked Mrs. Chipley. Notice again, first of all, this is a question. So I know this is a Rule 1A, and I did highlight this the correct color, so that's good. So I know I'm working with Rule 1A. So let's just go through 1A and see if there's something that I need to fix here. So I need quotation marks around my dialogue, which I have right here. I also need a question mark after my spoken dialogue, which there's my problem right there. Check that out. That's my punctuation problem. I need to turn this into a question mark. And just to make sure, I need to make sure I have a period at the end, and I do. So I'm good there. I am just going to delete this just to make sure that I'm helping myself keep track. Let's take a look at this. Now, notice it says Rule 1A has to begin with a speaker tag or an exclamation sentence and end with the speaker tag, or it has to begin with the speaker saying something like a dialogue and end with the speaker tag. Since your speaker tag is at the beginning, this more closely matches Rule 2. You will need to correct some punctuation errors, however. Okay, so in this case, if I said this in yours, even if you didn't highlight it in the correct color, like notice how this isn't highlighted in yellow, I still gave this person or you, if this comment shows up on yours, I still gave you credit for a Rule 2 dialogue, okay? But notice how this piece of dialogue needs some work on the punctuation. So first of all, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through and I'm going to take a look and make sure that I have my quotation marks. And again, you should be replying or referring to your interactive notebook each time. I do have quotation marks. We're actually in Rule 2, so I'm down here. I do have quotation marks around what they're actually saying. I need a comma after the speaker tag. Whoop, I don't have a comma after speaker tag, so I'm going to add that. Now, don't remember my rules for retake. I'm going to highlight any punctuation mark that I add pink. So there it is. It's pink. I want to make sure that I have my punctuation mark at the end, and I do, so I'm good to go. I'm going to resolve that comment. Next comment. I'm going to click on this, my next one. Check your capitalization, your punctuation. Now, when I wrote this, it could be two things. One, you could have a capital letter where it doesn't belong. So you have a capital letter, it should be lowercase. Or you could have a lowercase letter, it needs to be capitalized. Same way with punctuation. When I say check your punctuation, you could either have a punctuation mark that's extra that doesn't belong, or you're missing a punctuation mark. So when you see a comment like this, first off, you're going to find the rule in your interactive notebook, which notice this is yellow, so I'm going to be on Rule 2, and I'm just going to look through and see if I have everything I need. And the first thing I'm going to stop as I want to make sure that I have a comma after my speaker tag. Sure enough, I don't. So I'm going to add that, and then I'm going to highlight that pink because that's what we're doing for this retake. Anything I add, I highlight pink. I'm going to keep going just to make sure I have everything. Notice how I need to have a capital letter right where my character begins to speak, and I don't have that. So I'm going to change that, and I'm going to highlight it pink. And I just want to make sure that I have everything else I need. So I'm going to make sure I have a punctuation mark at the end, which I do. And I also want to make sure that I have quotation marks around where the character's talking, and I have that too. So I'm good to go. I'm going to actually delete this, resolve this comment just to help me keep track. Next comment. Check your capitalization and your punctuation. So again, I'm going to go through my interactive notebook. So now I'm on green, so I'm in interrupted. I want to make sure that I have quotation marks around my first piece of dialogue, which I do, so that's good. Looks like I have I need to have a comma there, and I have a question mark here. So that's one problem. So I'm going to change that to a comma, and then I'm going to highlight that pink because that's what I changed. Now, I'm not going to just stop there because there might be some more issues with this. So I'm going to read through this, go back to this, and looks like the next thing I need is a comma, going by that. So I need a comma after my speaker tag, and I'm missing that. So I'm actually going to add that, and I'm going to highlight that pink. My second piece of dialogue should be lowercase going by this. So I'm going to make sure mine is up. It's not. So I'm going to change that to a lowercase g, and I'm going to highlight that pink. And then I need to make sure I do have quotation marks around my second half of my dialogue, which I do there, so that's good. And I also want to make sure that I have an ending punctuation mark. I do there, so that's good. Looks like I'm good with this one. I'm going to delete this comment. Let's go to the next comment. I don't know why this one's not working. Sometimes they get kind of messy. There it goes. There it goes. Sometimes you just have to play with it. So this one here is just saying that you need to capitalize names. Now, this is not a skill that we worked on. So this is something I didn't take off points for, but in the future I will. So make sure you always capitalize names and you always capitalize I. Now, I'm not going to highlight this pink. I can if I want, but I'm not going to because this doesn't really pertain to this assignment. But I'm going to fix it as long as Mr. Hall took the time to put a comment in. Okay, let's click on this and see what's up with this. We have a punctuation error. And I'm going through here. Let's go to our rule 1B. I want to make sure I have quotation marks around my first or my piece of quote, which I do, my piece of dialogue. I also want to make sure I have a comma after my speaker tag. Oh, I don't, so I'm going to add that. And I'm going to highlight that pink. I just want to make sure that I'm good. A period after my, looks like I need a period after my speaker tag. And I have that, so I'm good with this one. Let's resolve that comment. Let's take a look at the next one. Okay, this one here, I need to reword this because it really doesn't sound like dialogue. It doesn't sound like they're actually talking. They heard footsteps coming down the stairs, and then once they saw who emerged, everyone felt silly, said Mrs. Chipley. Mrs. Chipley wouldn't say this. When we have a character speaking, it should be in first person. So I am going to change they to we. We heard footsteps coming down the stairs, and then once we saw who emerged, I might just put we all felt silly. Said Mrs. Chipley. Now, before I call this good, I want to make sure I have all the punctuation marks that I need. So this is a rule 1A. So again, I should have quotation marks around where they're actually talking. Looks like I have that. I need to have a comma after my right before my speaker tag or right after they end their conversation. I don't have that, so I'm going to add that. And then I should have a period at the end of my sentence, and I have that. I'm just going to go ahead and highlight this whole thing pink because I pretty much changed the whole thing here. I had to reword this whole thing to make it match a conversation. So I'm going to just highlight this whole thing pink. I'm going to resolve that. Now, I'm going to go through and see, oh, looks like I need to add another Rule 1A dialogue. So I need to add another piece of dialogue that has a question or an exclamation. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to skim through my story and I'm going to see, do I have anything? Maybe I have something here and I just forgot to highlight it. And sure enough, I do. And remember, if we go back to our retake steps, if we need to add something, we're going to highlight it the color that matches the rule, and then we're going to reply to the comment. So remember, Rule 1A is red, so I'm going to highlight this red. And then I'm going to reply to the comment, added dialogue, just so Mr. Hall knows that I did do this. So I'm going to go down here, and I'm going to click on this comment, and I'm going to put added dialogue, and click reply. Okay, so I took care of that, and I'm not going to resolve this comment because I need this to be here for Mr. Hall so he knows when he's grading that I did add this dialogue. Let's go to the next one. Okay, I need to add another Rule 2 dialogue. So again, I'm going to go up, and I'm going to look and see, first of all, do I have any other piece of dialogue where it begins with a speaker tag and ends with and ends with dialogue, and I don't see any. So I'm going to cheat. When this is really not cheating, I'm going to work more efficiently. And I'm going to take this right here, because notice this is a rule 1 right here now, because this actually begins with the dialogue and ends with the speaker tag. I'm going to put that speaker tag up front. I'm going to put Mrs. Chipley replied. And remember, if I go through my rules, when I do this, I need to have a comma after that. So I'm going to put a comma here. Are you serious with me right now? I thought you were going to kill us. Okay, I'm going to put a period here, and then I'm going to delete this. And again, I'm getting kind of comfortable with this, but if I wasn't, I'd be looking at this right here, and I'd make sure I have all my punctuation marks. And before I highlight, I'm going to do that. I want to make sure that I do have a comma after my speaker tag, which I do right there. I want to make sure that I have punctuation marks around my dialogue, which I do right there. I want to make sure that my first letter in my dialogue is capitalized, which it is. And I want to make sure I have a punctuation mark at the end, which I do. And remember that rule 2 is yellow. So I'm going to highlight this yellow. And then I'm going to reply to the comment just to let Mr. Hall know that I did this. Added dialogue. I'm going to scroll through here. I don't have any more comments, so I should be good to go. So I'm just going to click Turn In. It's going to take me back to Google Classroom. It's going to ask me if I want to really actually turn this in. I do. And it's done. Now, remember that I just want to go over this real quick. Remember that if I do want to go back, and let's just pretend, oh, I forgot to add something, it's going to say view only, and I can't do anything with it. So that means if I do want to go back and make changes, I am going to have to go back and unsubmit it and then make changes. And I'm not going to unsubmit it because I'm good to go. If you have any questions, please either send me an email or see me with this. And remember that this is due at the end of the week. So our goal is to have this all done, all the corrections made by Friday.